Performance Baseball's coaches development. Today we're working on the game inside the game. So what we're doing is we're talking about the little nuances that we have to execute inside the game that help develop a leading role into which benefit the win. The things that we have to do, the little things that can culminate and give us a complete game. As we're going through this today, we're going to talk about kind of communication, trust, responsibilities, and how we can practice those throughout to create a relationship by the players that allows us to make those plays. To start off with, it's the mentality that you have to have in a pitch-to-pitch basis. We want our guys to be able to look at the batter and see that it's a left-handed batter or a right-handed batter. It's a speed guy. It's a pull guy. What tendencies they're going to have at the plate and how we can make those adjustments in the field without having to be told. Other things that we can do is paying attention on the bases when guys aren't paying attention, and we can make a throwdown or we can make a pickoff or catch the other team off guard because we have a relationship in which we know how to take advantage of the other team. On the other side of that, on the offensive side, it's knowing when we can steal bases, knowing, again, when other teams aren't paying attention, that we can take advantage to help benefit us. Part of this is having that bond with our teammates, right? I mean, everybody knows that it's a group effort, it's a team collaboration, but there are certain positions like the middle infield and the outfielders who have a lot of interaction with each other. Those sort of unspoken bonds are what we want to kind of reach towards today as we get into responsibilities of each position. So with that, it's going to be working towards a clean game and taking almost difficult plays and making them routine plays. How we can go about that is really pretty simple. A lot of it has to do with repetition, execution, and communication. Like I said earlier, we want to be able to make sure that our players have an unspoken bond. That bond or trust that knowing one guy is going to make the play. That doesn't mean that the same guy has to make the play every single time. It's just I keep saying trust over and over again, but it is the trust that someone is going to make the play. Someone is going to give that extra effort. Somebody's going to dive for it. And when that happens, we know how to cover them, back them up, make sure that if they miss, we're not in a poor position where the other team can take advantage of us. The defensive side is probably the hardest part for this. Like I said earlier, you have your middle infielders that have that huge trust and the outfielders that have the trust. But it's a 9-player team, okay? There are certain balls that fly in that quote-unquote no man's land. Balls that, reach right behind the infield, just in front of the outfield. Balls that are hit in foul territory and kind of going over who we need to have to cover those. Like we have we'll talk about the no man's land. Goodness, that has to deal with center field, left field, shortstop, center field, right field, second base, first base, all of that and alike. When we're doing these drills, when we're working with this, what we want is our guys to have a set position. Our guys that's their primary position That way we're not having a guy who's in left field playing right field. He'll fly ball jack spot, and our second baseman isn't used to that guy not being the guy that goes for the ball, or knowing when he can take advantage of going for the ball and knows when to pull back so the other guy can make the play. With that, there's really just a constant repetition, a constant or a consistent work that is done. Now, when we talk about this, it's more of a guy who has a master of his trade, It's working constant reps, knowing exactly how and when and why and where. How is going to be where we start with here. Say we have a guy, we'll go with a ball to the right side. If it's on the ground and our first baseman knows it's in between that first base, second base hole, he knows how far his range can go. The reason we need to know how far he can go is so that if he knows it's outside of his zone, he can trust his second baseman to make the play. If it's within his zone, his reach, something he can make a play on, the pitcher knows I have to cover first. Second baseman knows, hey, if he is going to go for this, I need to be able to get behind him just in case. And the right fielder, again, is that backup too. All of these little nuances, the way to cover gap spaces, bases that have been evaded for this. Second baseman knows if the first baseman's going for it, he's got the backup. Pitcher knows if the first baseman's going for it, he has to cover first. Right fielder knows, hey, this ball's coming through here. They're more likely to get this opportunity. I need to be able to come in to field the ground ball if it goes through, but also I can be there to back up the throw to first in case it's a wild throw or a mishap on the throw or something like that. Everybody gets into their positions properly. Again, with things of this nature, it's all about reps, all about consistency with that man at that position. It's okay for us at the smaller levels to move our guys around, find out what positions they are going to be best at. With like our 8U group, this would be a great instance and to see which kids kind of have that sort of fit, that range, that criteria, the game knowledge that puts them in a good position to succeed in their fielding spot, in their rotation. Working with our younger guys, it's really, really simple. With this, it's just basic game knowledge. They're not going to be a master of craft at 8 years old, at 10 years old, at 12 years old. But as they get older, their primary position should be something that they've already settled into. It is a position in which they know, okay, I have to do this responsibility, I have to do this coverage. If the ball goes to this spot, I have to be here. As an 8U group, it's going to be a game, a fun game, kind of practice. Something that's like, hey guys, what we're going to work on today is a competition to see who can get to the ball first. And whoever gets to the ball first wins. Whoever doesn't get to the ball has to cover whoever got to the ball their spot. What this does is it teaches our guys, like, okay, I know every time I go for this ball, this fly ball, this ground ball, I have to beat this player, or this position, and this position to the ball. If I don't, then my responsibility shifts from fielding the ball to covering the base. And it allows a lot of small, nuanced baseball IQ. It doesn't really matter how old we get, how skilled we are, we can always improve on our baseball IQ. And the beautiful thing about baseball IQ is it is not a skill set that is given like speed or strength. Anybody can master baseball IQ in the game, and anybody can make plays just because they're smart enough to do so. As they get into the older groups, the middle groups, the 10-year-olds, the 12-year-olds, that's when you find out like who's kind of going to be able to really take over that area. Who's going to be the guy that can be leaned on to make the plays. When we work for the 12U guys or the 11U guys, this is going to be a little bit more of a refined kind of practice, kind of set. When we work with our infielding as a whole, there are certain what I call triangles on the field, and that relates to our pitcher, our catcher, and our first base. That's one triangle. Then the opposite side, the third baseman, the pitcher, and the catcher. Then we have the pitcher, the second baseman, and the first baseman. Then we have the pitcher, the shortstop, and third baseman, second base, shortstop, pitcher. All those little corners, it's like a pizza slice. Everybody has a section of the field that they're required to cover, and they have to know not just their position, but the position of the guys around them. We'll talk a little bit more about that when we get into the drills segment, but for now, like that's kind of how we're going to have a mentality of I have this area to cover, I have this section to cover, and if I don't cover this, then I have X, Y, and Z that I have to use as a backup. I have X, Y, and Z as a coverage. I have X, Y, and Z to make the play. And the more reps that we get with those groups, the easier it is for those guys to understand exactly how and when and where to make those plays. Another one is when to make those plays. So, say we have a runner on first. Now our triangle dynamic has changed. First baseman is going to be holding a runner on, obviously. Now the range for the second baseman and the pitcher have to understand, like, okay, the triangle here is shortened. For the first baseman, his coverage isn't going to be as high. That's when things like ground balls to the first base gap or the third base shortstop gap, those guys, they're able to make the adjustments, and they can say, okay, with the runner on first, first baseman, he can't make this play, so now I have to give the extra effort, and I might have to dive to cover the ground that he can't make up. Right field is no longer, going to go for the ground ball back up to first base. He's going to go more towards the ground ball and back up for the second baseman. Things for the first baseman, the pitcher, and the catcher, ground ball or a bunt or just something soft in that area. First baseman is going to be coming off the bag. He's not going to have as deep of a move, so he might be able to make a reaction on the ball a little bit quicker. Pitcher, again, has to know how much range the first baseman has. His responsibilities doesn't change as a pitcher. If the first baseman can make the play, cool. Now he has to go cover first. Things like this are going to make simple instances where things can go awry, things can go wrong, that they are sound in their technique and sound in the game that allow us to make what seem to be exceptional plays, normal plays. Another one is knowing why. Why do they have to cover? Why do they have to have this responsibility? If our guys are able to recognize early on in counts, okay, it's an early count, I might have to defend against a bunt. If it's a late count, like, okay, we got 2 strikes on him, he's probably not going to bunt. The pitch-by-pitch adjustments that we can make allow us to get into better defensive positions. This meaning that our guys are able to not only be able to make the plays, but they're able to make the correct plays for the right reasons. As we get into our older groups, our 13U, our 14U, this is almost expected of our guys. Each player has to understand what kind of pitch count we're in, what kind of pitch is going to be thrown. Like I said earlier, the batter, whether he's a pull hitter, speed guy, things of that nature, they have to understand exactly what it is that is expected of them and how they can make the play. We look at things in today's game like the shift. It's been taken out quite heavily now, but in those circumstances, it was a adjustment that was made to benefit the defense, right? We make these calls as coaches, but what we need to be able to do is instill that kind of strategy to where our guys instantly know how to do that. They instantly understand what it is that we expect out of them and how to execute it. Knowing the situations and being able to predict the outcome are going to be almost second nature. It's going to be something where, okay, we can adjust to this defense for a situation like a runner on first. We know double play depth. Corners are going to be even with the bases. We know it's no doubles defense. Game-winning run is on and we can't allow extra spots. So the defense automatically can adjust. There's a game-winning run in the third base side, on third base, and we have to stop him at the plate. And because we know, hey, we're going to throw an off-speed pitch here, the chances of him grounding and rolling over are going to go higher to this side. So our second baseman can move up the middle. Our third baseman and shortstop can be a little bit more inclined to focus on the ground ball. It's just understanding how and when to react as it goes. And the kids are exactly that. They're kids. They're not going to be able to immediately recognize it. But as coaches, we have to be able to tell them a situation and make them understand, like, this is exactly what we need to do if we get into the situation. And using these techniques in practices are going to take off the pressure. It's going to make it instinctive instead of just a thought process where they get the ball, but they don't know what to do with it as soon as they get the ball. They just catch it and they know, okay, I have to make the play here. I have to do this. I have to cover this area as my responsibility. If I can't, then I can tell the other guy, hey, that's your play midway and know how to make that situation or that instance as limited in the damage as possible. As we go into it, it makes for, like I said, the routine plays easy and the extraordinary plays routine, or the difficult plays routine. When we get into this, it's not a situation as a coach to where we have to yell out, hey, so-and-so, our play is going to be here. They should be able to recognize the situation, assess what is going to happen, and predict that outcome as soon as the batter hops into the plate. And as we run through it in practice, we can do it as a team, we can do it as a unit, as groups, it doesn't matter. But the more reps we can give them, the better they will be to understand. Like I said earlier, execution through repetition. What I mean by execution through repetition is we make those plays, we make those practices, we make those reps so often that the players, the team almost can't get it wrong. They have done it so many times that it is a second nature. And it will take time, and it will take patience. And, sometimes you're going to find your gamers. Sometimes you're going to find the guys, like I said, for the 8 you guys, you move them around until you find what fits. That happens at all levels. And when a situation becomes dire or a situation becomes almost exposed, we have to be able to recognize as coaches what players need to be where to, one, help benefit the team, and two, to help keep the confidence of the players at a high level. When we do that, it makes it more beneficial and it makes it more fun for the players to know, okay, I'm really good at this. Okay, I need to work on this. And when we do that, what really happens is the team not only plays better, but they understand their role. They understand their responsibilities. They understand what skills they can show off, what skills they can work on. And when we have our practices, it's always important to be in an explanation as to why we are doing the things that we're doing. What we need to do as leaders, if there's a mistake made, we have to reassure them. Like, hey, when we practice this drill, what was your responsibility? Kind of quiz them, but keep it short. That way, when the next time it comes around, it's like, hey, okay, remember, in practice, you have to cover here. In practice, we did this situation. This was your responsibility. And as they kind of understand how it goes and understand how you want them to make certain plays, it kind of becomes something that keeps them accountable. It keeps them focused. Like I said, it's a pitch by pitch basis, so it's always changing. It's always different. But without them getting confused or getting overwhelmed, we can just simplify it as their responsibilities and keeping them in check for just their section. With that, we have a very disciplined and a very responsive group, and I think with this, it will help go a very long way. For our defensive drills, it is, like I said, it's a triangle responsibility, a triangle section. How we break this down is we work in groups of 3 with the primary positions of each player starting off there to make plays on fly balls and ground balls. For our fly balls, they're both fair and foul territory. We will make sure that the practices or the drills objective and goal are clarified and that each player understands exactly what we are looking for, the purpose of the drill. What we want is for the players to get an understanding of who is in charge of going after a ball in each scenario. So, like I said earlier, the no man's zone, places that are in between the infield, the outfield, or fly balls on the infield, fly balls in foul play. Who is in charge of going after the ball and who is in charge of making the play? With the trust aspect of it, what we'll do is we'll break them off into 3 groups. And within the groups, the primary objective is not to allow a fly ball to reach the ground. And we're not going to just kind of throw it up where it's directed at a singular player. What we want to do is try and put them in a spot where they have to go as a group of 3 to the ball, and they have to decide who is going to make the play. As we continue to do repetitions on this, the guys will understand, okay, this ball belongs to me. Okay, I am expected to make this play. After such and such times, this player is more likely to reach a ball like this. But if he can't get to it, I still need to be here to make the play if I am in the right position. In certain spots, we are going to have balls that are on the ground in between bunt defenses or in the gaps. The balls that are in the gaps are more focused towards the infielders and outfielders, and the bunt defenses or the slow roller balls that aren't hit hard, those are going to be focused more towards the corners and the pitcher and the catcher. What we want from these are instant reactions. When we see the ball, we don't automatically think, oh, it's a fly ball. We think, okay, it's going to get out of play. Oh, it's a ball to the backstop area. I don't have to make a play. The catcher has it. We want 3 people trying to circulate a route to the ball, in which if the first guy loses the ball, there's another guy there that can either tell him where it's at or go make the play themselves. The way we break this down, like I said, we have triangle groups. So there's going to be 3 positions that are going to be grouped separately on the field. And as we get through the drill more and more and more, there will be a instance in where we hit guys who have their secondary position as part of the drill, and they'll move around the infield, around the outfield, so that way they get viable looks, they get viable situations that will translate into in-game situations. Our first group will be third base, shortstop, and left field as one coupling. The second coupling would be center field, right field, and second base, and then the pitcher, the catcher, and the first baseman. Now, the responsibilities of third base, shortstop, left field, center field, right field, and second base are ground balls in the hole between shortstop, third base, and ground balls in the hole between center field, right field, and at the second baseman. When we work the ground balls, we want our guys to dive. We want our guys to extend themselves, working plays. If we're in a situation where it's like, okay, we don't want you to hurt yourself or get injured, then what we can do is we'll have the guys simulate a dive. That way they're not falling on the ground, hurting themselves, getting scuffed up over and over. In that instance, what they would do is they would just extend their arms out in front of them towards the ball. That way they'll know, okay, hey, I need to dive for this ball. Or if I dive for this ball, then I might make this play. With that, it's more so being able to recognize when to dive. Not, okay, let's just put them in a position where they're diving and going over and over and over. Like I said, we don't want them to scuff up or get hurt, but it allows them to know, okay, I can dive for this ball. Okay, I need to dive for that ball. The other situation that we want to work is them staying low to the ground and trying to get it in a forehand or a backhand. The left fielder, in the situation between third base and shortstop, Their goal is to see the ball on the ground and immediately know, okay, I have to run in to back up the ball if these guys don't get it. And if they don't get it, then I'm already on the move towards second base to get the ball in, or third base to get the ball in, or to home to get the ball in. So that way they're in a good position to field the ball on the run and get the ball in quickly to limit the bases that the runner can advance. As they get into the routine of the drill, you'll find that they're kind of going to start cheating. They're going to kind of break a little early. We want to make sure that they are getting a pure reaction. We want to make sure that they're not getting that extra step before the ball is lifted. So when we want them to break is after contact. Now the coaches, when we're doing this drill, we're not hitting it from home plate. We can kind of have a little hard roll, or if you want to hit it with a fungo, you can hit it with a fungo or a bat. But you start from the pitching mound depth, pretty much halfway to third base, in between second base, or in between shortstop and third base. This allows for less time to react and more time, or more in-game like situation, fielding situations, more in-game response time. The approach that you want is to make sure that they are in a ready position. So they're already on the hop. They've already taken their post-pitch approach, and are ready to go as soon as the ball is hit. Like I said, we don't want them jumping too early. We don't want them cheating the play. But we want them to be ready to react as soon as the ball makes contact, or as soon as the ball is on the ground if we roll it. With these, it's pretty simple. You go through it about 10 times. Make sure that each position kind of gets a feel for the ball. If they field it, great. If they don't, okay, we need to explain. You need to take this route to the ball, the little drop step for third base, or the drop step for the shortstop, making sure their hips are rotating and they're getting a good, strong first step as they engage in the ball. What we want is to have each guy get to about 4 to 5 balls. If the third baseman is snagging every ball that you go for or you roll, you can either roll it more towards shortstop or put a little more juice in it and make it a little harder for them to get to. If the shortstop is getting to every ball, then we want to kind of make it more towards third base. That way the shortstop's not just setting up in one spot. They're getting challenged. If neither one of them are getting to the ball and it's all to the left field, maybe slow it down a little bit, just so that way they are able to get their reps in a forehand approach, in a backhand approach, to make the play. After they receive the ball or field the ball, what you want is them to come up ready to throw. They do not throw it across the diamond. They just receive it however it is. If they're getting it in the forehand, then they're squaring their shoulders to first base. If they're at shortstop, they're going to get a good plant foot, get their hips turned and opened, and their shoulders square to first before simulating a throw. If it's the outfielder, you want them coming in and getting a good crow hop step and simulating a throw without throwing it to second base or third base. With this, what we can also do is if the ball does reach the outfield, we can simulate a runner on first and the play is at third. If third base doesn't get it, and shortstop doesn't get it, the shortstop does not stop. They continue on to third base to cover. So the third baseman is able to get into a relay position for home in case the ball does happen to get through the left side and get by him. He is able to be in a natural relay spot to throw home. With this, it allows us to be prepared for what would be a quote-unquote worst case scenario. Like I said earlier, it is each player knowing their responsibilities, each player knowing that if they can't make a play, they can trust the guy next to them to make the play, to cover them, to make sure that everybody has a spot to be in. For the fly balls, in this instance, it would be just kind of standing right there on the ledge of the infield, or if you want to stay even with the mound, you can. But your job is to float a ball over the shortstop and behind the third baseman to where the left fielder, the shortstop, and the third baseman all have to converge on the ball. The goal for this is literally keeping the ball off the ground. They do not want the ball to touch the ground. If they do, then they lose, or it's a strike against them, or however you want to count it. But the consistent work allows them to understand, like, if there's a ball in this position, I can get this kind of read. We want to work both balls in play and balls that are foul balls. With the foul balls, I'd put a little more arc on it, which allows more time for the players to make the play. With this, it's understanding, who's responsible for what, and kind of gives them a little extra confidence to know, okay, I can go make this play. For center field, right field, and second base, it is the zones, the triangle zone, the no man zone, no man zone, that falls right behind the second baseman's head, and you will switch it up to do shortstop and left field later, and they'll do the same drill. But what you want is ground balls that are towards, or fly balls that are towards the middle of them. Again, we're trying to triangulate a spot in which we know which player will be able to make the play. With this, you guys will be, as coaches, on second base. That way, it gives you an opportunity to just kind of float the ball over them. It's not going to be something that is hard hit. It's going to have a little bit of air under it. Kind of like the fly ball, you want to give them a little bit of space to where all three of them can possibly get there at the same time, but they can communicate or call off everybody else. And, if they do, then everybody gets to the correct spot for a backup. So fly ball that's in between center field, right field, and second base. If the right fielder is making a lot of the plays, kind of float it more towards the center field spot. If center field is making all the plays, kind of make it towards the second base, right field spot. And if the outfielder making the plays, kind of put it right behind second base to where he can get his reps as well. With that, you want to make sure that if you put it in the outfield a little bit farther than the second baseman can reach, that whether the center fielder or the right fielder go for the ball, say the center fielder calls it, the right fielder knows, hey, I have to get behind him to back up in case he does miss it and it doesn't get to the fence. Or he doesn't dive for the ball and miss it, and then we have to wait for him to get back up. The right fielder is automatically there and able to throw it in, and the second baseman is in a good spot for a relay to second base, or is able to get back to second base for a throw to second if the shortstop has to be a cutoff for third. Again, we do not want them throwing the ball. We want them to square their shoulders and simulate a throw just to make sure that it happens. For ground balls for this, it would be instances in which the second baseman is kind of cheated on the right side or towards first base for a pull hitter, and the ball goes up the middle a little bit, and both center field and right field can make a play, and the second baseman can also try to get there. Again, we don't want him diving necessarily, but if he extends his arms outside of his body to simulate the dive. That's fine. Keeping the play alive if the ball does go through, then center field and right field have the right approach. Always working towards the ball to get a good crow hop throw ready, and then whoever does not field is in a backup spot. Now, with the pitchers, the catchers, and the first baseman in this first group, what we want is balls that are hit softly or bunted towards the right side of the infield. Each player knowing when they can make that play and what responsibilities they have if the ball is not, or if the ball is fielded by a different position. So if we have a ball that's hit weakly down the first base line, and the pitcher and the first baseman are immediately on the move for the ball. If the first baseman calls it, the pitcher knows, okay, I have to get to first base to cover. Normally in that kind of situation, if nobody's on base, second baseman might be the guy that covers as well. But for this drill, we want the pitcher working into the foul line and up the foul line in the inside part of the bag at first for a possible toss or a throw to make that play. Balls that are hit in between the three of them or bunted in between the three of them, each player must know, okay, if I'm going to go after this, if I don't reach it, I know to cover home plate or I know to cover first base. If it's a soft ground ball or a soft bunt, we would have the pitcher, the catcher, and the first baseman kind of all converge. If it's too short for the first baseman to reach, he has to be able to recognize, okay, I can't make that play, and he gets back to first. And then if the catcher takes control of it and makes the play, the pitcher knows to cover home plate. The same thing, same drill is used for the pitcher, the catcher, and the third base when they do their drill in the second group. What you want to do as the coach is you're going to stand at home plate. Again, you can either use a fungo or you can roll the ball, and that allows for a more game-like kind of situation or reaction for the players. You go through these again. Each station is 15 reps. If first baseman's taking over and making plays, kind of roll it a little softer. If the pitcher's making all the plays, kind of put it more towards the first baseman or towards the catcher. The catcher's making all the plays, make it a little deeper to give the pitcher and the first baseman their reps. For fly balls, fly balls down the line that are in between there in fair and foul play are a common drop for most teams. This is because of bad reactions, not being able to see the ball, not understanding where they are on the field, not knowing the distances or the diagram of the field, and knowing how much room they have. If we can eliminate this just gives us extra outs that we weren't counting on or expecting to make as a simple defensive fielding position. Fly balls in foul territory need to be, again, in a higher altitude, kind of throw them a little higher to allow all three players to make a play. If you have a ball that's more towards first base, deeper towards first base, we want to work with the catcher getting to the fence or the backstop first to tell his first baseman or his pitcher, whoever's trying to make the play, how much room they have. Once they're getting close to the fence, they're able to say, fence, find it. That allows for our position players to reach their hand out and make sure that they have enough room before they collide into the fence, the wall, the chain link, whatever you want to call it. And also gives them a sense of security so they can go as hard as they need to without getting injured. when the ball is shorter between the catcher and the pitcher, it's the first baseman's job to get up next to the fence and communicate to them in the same manner. We want to work that a little bit more than balls in play because it's a less commonly worked routine. With that, it goes hand in hand with regular fly balls that are in play. When we do the fly balls that are in play, what we want are balls that are pretty high for their age group. We don't want to send nuke shots up in the air 50 feet for our 8U, 10U, 11U guys. But for our 12U guys and older, we want to put them pretty high and make them get a read on the ball, so that way we know which guys are able to take charge, and they know which guys we want to take charge for fly balls. Some guys don't like the pitcher going for it. The age group that they're in, we want everybody going to make a play until someone steps in and says, ball, I got it. And as soon as they hear it, they have their ability to cover the base that is abandoned. So for fly balls between pitcher, catcher, and first base, if the first baseman calls it, the pitcher is able to cover home if the catcher is deep, and the catcher can just continue on to first base to make a play there. If it's shallow, then the pitcher knows to cover home, the catcher can make a play, and the first baseman can get back. Hopefully the second baseman is there if there's nobody on base. And so that routine is covered. The same thing for the pitcher, the catcher, and the third base when doing these drills. You want to make sure that the catcher gets down the line for balls that are deeper to third base side, and he tells him how much room he has, when to find the fence, all that, and as well as covering bases that have been abandoned, so they know what responsibilities they have. For our second groups, what we would have is the first base, second base, and the right fielder. What they will do is the exact same thing that the shortstop, third base, and left field did. That drill will be repeated just on the opposite side. And the same with center field, left field, and shortstop. They will repeat the drill that was made for center field, right field, and second base. After you go through that first group, the second group should be pretty simple. Again, our positions as coaches for the fly balls and ground balls for first base, second base, and right field is halfway up the line, or even with the mound, and then just inside the first base, second base gap. That way it allows us for ground balls and fly balls to be more natural and more game-like. Center field, left field, and shortstop, again, taking that ball from second base, just kind of putting it up there as your starting position as the coach to do the drill, and then at home plate for the pitcher, the catcher, and third base. That's where we want our coach to be to do this drill. Now, the third group, that's when we start working in secondary positions with it. We will have 2 guys at second base, 2 guys at shortstop, 2 guys at center field, and 2 guys on the mound. What we want is our first coupling of 3 in the third group to be our second baseman, our shortstop, and our center fielder. What they're going to do is work ground balls up the middle. The coach, you'll be right behind the mound to give them the best game-like look. Again, we're working ground balls. We want them to be able to dive, use both sides of the bag, one towards shortstop side of second base, one towards second base's side of second base for ground balls. That way they understand, what coverages they can take and what kind of backup roles they can have. Center fielder, again, charging in on ground balls. The goal is to make sure that none of the balls get past any of those 3. For fly balls, again, drop them in behind shortstop towards center field, behind second base towards center field, and in between the 3 of them. That way each player knows, okay, I can get to this ball, I can get to this ball. He can cover this ball, he has this range. and they start to understand who to trust for a ball in certain spots. Again, communication is key. Balls that are shorter towards the infield that second base and shortstop are making plays on kind of adjust and make it a little deeper to where center fielder is getting action as well. And then if the center fielder is calling off balls, the second baseman and the shortstop know to get back to the bag and where to be in case of a cutoff if need be. Normally in these situations, a first baseman will be the cutoff for throws like to the home plate. Shortstop cutoff throws for third base. Hopefully the pitcher is covering first base on those balls or is getting behind home plate as his backup for it. With that, you're also going to have the third baseman, your second shortstop, and your pitcher working fly balls. So the one shortstop that's working with second base and center field will have his section, and then the other shortstop will be working with one of the pitchers and the third baseman from their positions. That coach will be planted at home plate, and you're working ground balls that go softly hit in between the three of them. You want to simulate to where the pitcher knows to cover if the third baseman takes it, or the shortstop knows to cover if the third baseman takes it, depending on which player has a better route to third base. The goal of that is to kind of throw it up in the air a pretty decent amount, just to make sure that they know, okay, pitcher has to work backwards. So if it's shallow, third base and the pitcher have a priority to it. If it's deeper, third base and shortstop have the priority to it. And the pitcher knows, like, if one of those two have the call that he is to cover third base because it's been abandoned in case of a runner on, say, second base, and it happens to drop. The base isn't empty and somebody doesn't just get a free base on us. The third group would be the second pitcher, first base, and second base. They will do the same drill as the shortstop and third baseman. You can kind of circulate between the two as the coach, standing from home plate. You can work the left side and then the right side and allow for a lot of guys to get a lot of reps. And it kind of shortens up the drill in its entirety and as a whole. With the third group, we want to make sure that each guy gets a rep at his secondary position. So after you go through it 15 times, 20 times, however many times it takes them to get to the drill, you send them off to their secondary position. That way they get multiple looks at multiple spots, and try your best to match them with guys that would play with in the game most consistently.